Welcome everyone to our Teamsters Mobilize general membership meeting. My name is Chantel. I'm a part-time sorter in Local 177 North Jersey. I'm a member of the steering committee of Teamsters Mobilize. I'm the chair of it. This is our agenda for today. So I'll ask the other steering committee members to introduce themselves, and then we're going to talk about our principles as an organization, some of the history over the last few years of TM. We'll present the organizational structure and some basics of a constitution that we wrote up. We won't go so in depth, and we'll share that with people later on and ask for your feedback in the next month. Then we'll talk about some current campaigns. So we have, we'll be talking about organizing against the 4-6 punch. That especially our members in Local 639 have been leading this effort, our PCDs there. And then also kind of starting up a campaign around a Palestine statement that we recently put out. We'll share just some very basic next steps to get further involved with Teamsters Mobilize. And then lastly, for like the last hours, what we're aiming for, we'll have some open discussion for everyone to talk about what it is that they want to see changed in our union, ideas on how we can do that, potential challenges that we face in carrying those things out, just kind of, open discussion. So that's our plan for today. I will hand it over to Jess to introduce herself.
Hey guys, my name is Jess. I am a 6-year part-timer and the union steward on the Griffin, Georgia preload out of Local 728. I am a Teamsters Mobilize steering committee member. I am the chair of the organizing committee. And I am also a proud member of the LGBTQ+ caucus. And I will pass that to Tony.
Morning, everyone. My name's Tony. I'm a UPS part-timer package handler out of Seattle, Washington, Local 174. I'm a member of the TM steering committee, and I'm serving as the general secretary. I'll pass it off to Will Pena. Would you like to introduce yourself, Will?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Will Pena. I'm out of Teamsters Local 396 in Southern California, 30-year package car driver and proud 97 strike veteran, and also member of Teamster Mobilize. Thank you. And I'll pass it off to the next.
Will Hill, would you like to introduce yourself next? Oh, we can't hear you, Will. Let's come back to you, Will. I'll let you work out your sound, and we'll go on to Colleen.
Hey everybody, it's great seeing a lot of familiar faces, and I am at a Local 70. I work with Kat at the Oakland Airport, and we're shop stewards, part-timers, and within the steering committee, I will be chairing the political education and media committee, along with some others. Who can I pass to next? Jose, would you like to introduce yourself?
Buenos dias a todos. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jose Francisco Negrete. Sorry, I'm on the road right now. I'm out of the Teamster Local 952 in Orange County, out of the Anaheim Hub. Twilight, 25-year part-timer, and proud, proud Teamster Mobilize.
And let's go back to Will Hale. I still can't hear you, Will. That's all right. Did we miss anyone else?
I think that's all of us from the steering committee on today. A number of people couldn't make it, a number of people are working. Yeah, and Will Hale is a part-timer in Denton, Texas, and he is the secretary of the organizing committee, since he wasn't able to speak. Great, okay. So next we're gonna talk just a little bit about our principles as Teamsters Mobilize. This is from a brief pamphlet about Teamsters Mobilize that you can find on our website, but I'm going to pass it along to Jess to get us started about, what it is that we're trying to do as TM.
Hey guys. So our mission at Teamsters Mobilize is to engage, educate, and empower. That's what we want to do. We want to do that from the lowest ranks within the Teamsters, throughout all classifications. We really want to create that solidarity. We want to push back on all the division that the company has intentionally put into place. We spend a little too much time against one another when we can use that energy to fight the company. And we want to let people know as soon as they come in the door, starting with our part-timers that are the largest classification of UPS Teamsters, making up almost 60% of our workforce. We want to talk to those people. We want to educate those people. We want to empower those people to stand up for their rights, hold the company accountable, and just push back against the mistreatment and the exploitation that we're up against on a constant basis. And we want to do that by leading the way on our shop floors. It has to start there. You have to have somebody that wants to be part of the change. And it only takes that one person to really kind of start leading the way and empowering everybody around you to do the same thing. And we want to grow that beyond Teamsters. We want to grow that across other unions, just the working class in general, because it's really a bigger fight against global capitalism. And, we want the working class to take back our shop floors, our local and international unions, and our whole country from, corporate people that exploit us endlessly.
Great, thank you, Jess. And I'll pass it off to Tony to speak next.
Yeah, labor unions and the Teamsters Union in particular are a critical site of struggle between workers and big business. Union workers must actively organize themselves and struggle to seize and maintain power within our unions as the interests of big business creep in continuously, sometimes overtly and sometimes under the surface. Here in Teamsters Mobilize, we understand that we can't always, and in many cases, not at all, count on our BAs or IBT leadership like Sean O'Brien, nor the TDU leadership to lead this struggle within our union. TM understands that we need to expose and oppose passivity and open corruption amongst our union leadership on the international, local, and shop level. TM recognizes that the IBT leadership historically has run our union as a company union, repeatedly throughout its history, shutting down strikes, undercutting the efforts of militant workers, carrying out membership raids of other unions, and holding back the US labor movement as a whole. The IBT certainly doesn't teach its membership this history. And as we saw at the TDU convention last month, TDU's version highlights some of these points, but they're quick to paint the O'Brien administration as the end of this rampant business unionism in the IBT. Time here won't permit for us to go into depth in the Teamsters history on today's call, but I'm going to propose in the future for TM to study this history more closely and prepare a presentation to educate us further on this history in our union. In this history of the Teamsters Union, labor militants win victories and suffer defeats repeatedly, and it offers critical lessons for us to apply in our struggle as Teamsters workers today.
Okay.
I'd like to pass it to Will Pena, one of our long-timers in Teamsters Mobilize, to speak about his experience joining the Teamsters Union in '94 and his experience in the '97 strike and the contrast to today.
Good morning, good evening, comrades. I'm here to speak on my experience and why Teamsters Mobilize. When I was first hired in '94 as a part-timer inside the building at the old Soto Hub, I learned solidarity really fast. Why? Because members there, veterans there, took me under their wing and they showed me what it means to be a trade unionist, what it means to take action on the shop floor, what it means when a boss attacks you, it's an injury to one, is an injury to all. I learned that really fast. And in the coming weeks, I learned that how bad the bosses were exploiting me. How bad, how much work and how much suffering I was putting in those trailers. I got a lesson real fast in class war. We were so militant in that building that we would do slowdowns. We would get 8-hour days if they would just even put their hands on us. That is gone. It is missing now. Those days are far behind us, and we need to bring those days back. And the only way we're going to bring those days back is with an informed militant union, rank and file led from the bottom up. As others will speak on this later, sometimes our union acts like a middle manager of capitalism. And that's not what we need. The labor movement is moving in a different direction. We do not need any more business unionism, okay? I mean, after the 97 strike, that really, really touched me. It really impacted me. It impacted my way of thinking, my political way of thinking, and what it means to be in a collective unit taking power back from the capitalists. But as we know, Ron Kerry was the president at the time, and there was a coup d'etat against him, and they brought in Hoffa. What happened during the Hoffa era? Nothing but givebacks, nothing but friendly corporate contracts, creation of tiers, creation of more division, more business unionism. And it just, like Tony said earlier, it set back the labor movement by decades. And it was already in its back heels, right? Since the late 70s. So why Teamsters Mobilize? Well, we want to take back our shop floors. We want to take back our unions. We want to take back our futures. We want a union that expresses international solidarity with other workers from other trade unions across Europe, across the Middle East, in Palestine, to be in solidarity with those comrades that have called for other trade unions to be in solidarity with them. That's what we want. We want a more radical, more militant vision of the Teamsters Union. And that's why we are here. That's why we were created. And that's where we're moving. And if you see this vision as yours, please join us. Join us in this movement and join us in this fight for democracy and an equal society. Thank you. And I'll pass it off to the next speaker.
Thank you, Big Will. Okay, now I'm going to pass it over to Jess. If she wants to speak just a little more on the need to struggle against these different divisions that, you know, our bosses, but also our union leadership have really worked to create to divide us.
Yeah, so, you know, I feel like the biggest division happened in 1982. You know, part-timers and full-timers prior to that were making essentially the same exact wage. I don't think it's a coincidence that the people that the public see every day are the ones that continue to make a fair wage, while the part-timers got left behind. And they have got left behind ever since, further and further and further behind. Dennis Taylor was even quoted that, you know, they purposely kept wages artificially low because of it afforded them wins in other areas. So they were knowingly leaving people behind. So that the few, you know, the minority of UPS workers could benefit while the majority of us got less and less with each contract. And a lot of our full-timers still have the mentality that part-timers don't deserve to be paid as well as them. You know, many of us feel like it's not how many hours you work. We're all working hard. We all deserve to be paid well per hour, whether you work 3 hours or you work 14, which is another problem. You shouldn't have to work 12 hours or 14 hours or whatever. You know, you should be able to go home after an 8-hour day if you're a full-time worker. But our union has been complicit in this, and they don't really still want to talk about it, as far as how it came to be and their part in it. And I don't really feel like it can be, you can't really start fixing it until you talk about it. And, you know, there's a lot of division between us sometimes. I know even the last few weeks, I've been trying to post a lot about the 4-6 punch. And during that posting, I even had somebody respond to me, assuming that I was an RPCD. And they said, I feel sorry for you. Part-timers didn't get that protection. You shouldn't have it either. So yeah, part-timers got screwed. Nobody should have to work a 4-6 punch. That's how it should be. Unfortunately, that's not the way it is. But RPCDs did win that, and we want to back them in that. We don't want to fight about what they've got that we don't have. You know, let's all work together and let, you know, everybody come up together. The RPCDs, they can't help that they won that. They didn't, you know, they didn't go out there and vote for them to get it and us not to. That's just what leadership brought to us to vote on. And we want to use that energy to fight the company. Put it back on the company. Almost every single thing that they try to stack up for us to go against each other, if you really look at it, it's always, you can always put it back on the company, and that's where it should be put, because that's who's making these decisions. That is who's making this stuff come to be. There's nothing that we can do one-on-one between two people disagreeing, but what we can do is we can all come together and we can fight for better going forward for everybody. Your issue, my issue, their issue. Yeah, I think Yvette just said in the chat, an injury to one is an injury to all. If it's affecting any of us, it's affecting all of us. And we can work together to make that happen, because anytime that we spend fighting one another, that is precious time that we could have been kicking the company's ass. So that's what we want to do. Put it back on them, make people see that this is a company fight. Fight the company, fight the capitalist, and let's start making some progress.
Great. Thank you, Jess. Yep, I absolutely agree. And like you said, you know, as individuals, there's really not much that we can do to struggle against these larger issues that we face. And the way that, the union kind of system is set up is really to try to divert all of our struggles into just file a grievance, just talk to your supervisor or whatever it may be. But we think we really need collective struggle. And like we say in this part of our principles here, ultimately, we really do want to be working towards a country that's led by the working class. To get to that point, of course, we need to be waging all these different struggles within our unions against the companies. And I just wanted to see, I know, Jose, you're driving, but if you are able to unmute, the last point we wanted to talk about in our principles before going on to just some brief history of TM is why it is that TM thinks it's very important to take up political fights as well, putting forward political demands. Like later today, we're going to be talking about a Palestine statement that we wrote, in addition to all of these fights, against our bosses for better contracts, et cetera. So, Jose, if you're able to unmute.
On the question of if unions should be political and should take political action and be involved in politics, the answer simply is yes. Politics is local, and local things concern the working class. So we need to be political, whatever that may be. Fighting to get rid of Taft-Hartley, fighting for a PRO Act, fighting for real labor laws, not these boss laws that we have in the books that Big Will mentioned, my comrade Big Will, that only benefits the corporations. UPS stopped being a company around 2000 when it went public with their initial stock. So it's a corporation now. It's buying different entities to grow its tentacles. Same like we see it with Amazon, we see it with Walmart. So we need to be political in all different fronts, whether it's a local issue, whether it's a county issue, a state issue, federal issue, or an international issue, as we see in Palestine when we have Palestinian trade unionists calling for an international solidarity. It is our duty as trade unionists to stand up and be in solidarity with them. Because if an injury to one, an injury to all doesn't matter to you, you shouldn't be a unionist. We all stand together, regardless where you're at, regardless of classification, regardless of where you work at, what industry. We need to be in solidarity with one another. So Teamsters Mobilize is a political organization, but it's also an educational organization to educate, the rank and file in the shop floor so they can take action. Because I'm sick and tired of hearing this work now, grieve later. That only benefits the bad management. Because guess what? That problem is still going to be there, and it's just going to go from one area to another. So we need to take shop floor action. But TM's purpose is a political one, and it is an educational one. It is vitally important that all rank and file take up a political action, regardless it may be, for the benefit of the working class. And thank you.
Thanks, Jose. A lot of great stuff in the chat too. For now, we'll leave that there, just so we can get through some of the history. So yeah, just a brief timeline on some of the history and previous work of Teamsters Mobilize. I will open up. So basically, a group of UPS part-timers met at the 2021 TDU, Teamsters for Democratic Union Convention, and over the next year came together to propose at the 2022 convention a resolution that TDU form a part-timer caucus. This was opposed by the steering committee. A resolution that the steering committee accepted. The language was fairly vague, that TDU would support part-time organizing, which Will Hale hopefully will be able to unmute and speak on in a minute. But basically, so after that point in the fall of 2022, Teamsters Mobilize formed as an independent organization, seeing that particularly for the issues of part-timers at UPS, no one else was going to take up the leadership of this fight. So I am going to try to pass it over to Will Hale to speak a little bit about the contract organizing that Teamsters Mobilize did up until the point where the TA was released in July.
What's up, everybody? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Good stuff. So the space between the TDU convention and the no vote was a big space of experimentation for Teamsters Mobilize. We were sort of just trying to throw anything at the wall and see if it stuck. We were going to our general membership meetings and trying to get our leadership to go to the bargaining committee and to advocate for us. We were trying to work an inside-outside strategy with TDU, which had some success. We got $25 an hour on TDU literature before they were pressured to take that $25 an hour off of their literature, and they did capitulate to that pressure. We were trying to talk to people in their hubs and their barns and teach them how to do one-on-ones and how to build building committees. We were trying to build those building committees because our leadership said that they were going to build strike committees, and none of that was happening. All of that was sort of in the ether and going to be done at some point, you know, when we needed it. But we needed it that second to advocate for our rights on the shop floor and to not just trust our leadership. And you can see why we couldn't just trust our leadership, because in the end we did not get a comparable wage to the full-time inside people at UPS. So that was a big space of experimentation for Teamsters Mobilize, and some things worked and some things didn't, but ultimately we realized that TDU was not going to take up the mantle of watchdog, and they were not going to help with this no vote. And we went about, we set about the task of trying to organize a no vote, and I can pass it to Chantel.
Yes, so probably my guess is most people here knew about that campaign, participated in it. I can speak briefly about it, but also see if other steering committees members want to speak. Basically, yeah, in the lead up to the release of the TA, it became pretty clear to us we were not going to go on strike, and that the TA that we were going to get was not going to come close to meeting our demands, just based on the rhetoric coming out from Sean O'Brien and the rest of the negotiating committee. So we ran a Vote No campaign. We have some screenshots here. We did a few different webinars, put out some material, spoke out at all of our local meetings, flyered our coworkers to talk about the issues in the tentative agreement and what it was actually that we as members wanted to be fighting for. And although Teamsters Mobilize did start as a group of part-timers, really in this Vote No campaign, we broadened to be fighting for the demands of UPS Teamsters across classifications. Obviously, there were some key issues for part-timers, but a lot of key issues also for RPCDs and feeder drivers, which you can see more about on the website. So yeah, there's a illustration here by Kat, who is in the meeting today, about this line also from the IBT leadership, that there were absolutely no concessions, and that, I mean, they even released a graphic saying that anyone who's telling you that this isn't an incredible historic contract is like lying to you and is trying to sell you something, so that's how they painted basic opposition to the tentative agreement, something that was going to affect our lives for 5 years. And we saw, the role of the U.S. government also in pushing an agreement and stopping a strike, similarly to how we saw they pushed to crush a potential strike of the rail workers a year ago. So yeah, I wanted to see if anyone else from the steering committee wanted to speak on this campaign. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about our recent experience at the TDU convention 1 month ago.
Yeah, real quick, I'll speak on it. I want to build on some of the comments that were made earlier. So in our contract explanation meeting over here in Southern California, I was proudly wearing the 25 is the low or we vote no shirt to the meeting as a full-time driver. And I had nothing to, I had nothing to lose by wearing that, but I wanted to show my complete support and solidarity for the part-timers and their struggles. Because as we know, part-timers, sometimes, they find themselves without shelter, lacking of food, right? Other resources, right? And this company is making billions upon billions of dollars. Okay, so I went up there and I was making the case for why, to vote no. And my principal officer basically was saying that before they were all rah, we're going to strike, blah, 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 blah. We had all these pre-strike, practice pickets or whatever. And all of a sudden he's telling me, hey, I got a bunch of phone calls from these full-timers that aren't, down with striking for part-timers, that it's not worth it and this and that. And I told him, you know what? In '97, full-timers stood up for me. They voted yes on a strike. They didn't care about the risks or whatever, or how they were going to pay for stuff, because that wasn't the point. The point was to advance the workers all together as one and show the labor movement in the country back in '97 that when you fight as a Teamster, you can win, right? And after I was saying after the '97 strike, what happened? What happened to me? I became a full-time combination worker. I got out of part-time poverty because of that strike and the vote yes on the strike from those full-timers back in those days, along with the part-timers, obviously, and along with the public support that we had for the strike. I was lifted up out of poverty because full-timers back then made a conscious choice that they were going to risk themselves for part-time workers. And that's the kind of mentality that we need to instill back into our membership, especially amongst full-timers. Us full-timers, we need to think about where we came from and never forget where we came from. We came from the part-time ranks. We cannot leave these people, we cannot leave our part-timers behind like we've done in the past. I mean, this contract, they said it's going to be all about the part-timers. As we know, they got sold out once again, right? $21 isn't a good wage in this economy, working 3.5 hours. Who can afford anything off of that? Who can afford anything off of that? You're living in a precarious country with hardly any social safety nets whatsoever, and we need to fight for more. This is the richest country on the face of the goddamn planet. And we have an underclass of part-time workers in our union ranks, living in poverty. I think that's a moral failure of the labor movement to allow something like that. And why is it that the labor movement is at 10% right now, or 9% actually from the last report that I saw? It's because of this. People see this and they say, why would I join a union when I'm not getting the respect or the pay that I deserve, right? Working this hard inside of a trailer, scanning 1,000 pieces and blowing them out and loading 3 trucks by myself, And as a matter of fact, I have My previous helper was a part-timer. We're trying to help him right now. He just got fired for attendance. And I think he got fired unjustly. And why? Why did he get fired? Because no one was there for him. And we want to eliminate that. We want to make sure that somebody's going to be there for him, to educate him, to tell him what his rights are, you know, and make sure that he gets the protections that he needs. And we need to build on that, you know, and not on that example, right? Nobody, absolutely nobody in the United States should be living like that at all. And I'll pass it on to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
If I may add something, when it comes to the UPS contract, we saw how complicit a so-called Reform Caucus was, as Will Hale mentioned earlier, how complicit they were in passing this contract. Before, they were a watchdog. Anything that they felt wasn't right for the rank and file, they went after, and they went after Hoffa. But with the formation of the OSLADE and his acceptance of the Teamster United slate, TDU just became a lapdog, you know, and they were complicit in pushing a yes vote, as well as the IBT pushed a yes vote upon the rank and file, you know, sending out the business agents and stewards, you know, to push a yes vote, you know, and we never had a real discussion. Some platforms did. Teamster Mobilize had several meetings, Zoom meetings to educate on why we should vote no. You know, the vote was the way it was, but if this contract was so historic by any stretch of the imagination, why do you need to campaign so vigorously for it? You know, why do you need to have other organizations such as TDU to push for it? And we can't forget about Labor Notes and other organizations that were pushing a yes vote. You know, DSA, they didn't take a stand when it came to this contract, when you had rank and file speaking out on this contract, and they shut it down. You know, so Teamster Mobilize went up against a lot of forces, you know, when it came to this contract. But next time around, we will be more organized. We will be more precise in our messaging. We'll have a better strategy in how to implement a vote no movement. But with that said, it is sickening how much the IBT, TDU, Labor Notes, DSA, DSLS were pushing this yes vote up on the rank and file. $21, like Big Will said, that's nothing in this economy. You still have comrades that are working 2 jobs just to get by, and $21 is not cutting it. And I'll pass it on to the next individual.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. I'll pass it to Tony to speak on this point if you want, and then also to speak about the TDU convention after that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to share a little bit how the Vote No campaign went in Seattle. Seattle has an extremely high cost of living. The housing wage is $42 an hour. That's the wage you need to make in order to afford the average apartment. Working full-time at $42 an hour. So $21 an hour does not cut it in Seattle. We're already being paid $24 an hour as part-timers. And that's still just about half the housing wage for our city. So leading up to the release of the tentative agreement during the contract campaign, you know, I was flyering outside my building weekly, sometimes multiple times a week, with other coworkers, gathering demands and organizing and preparing for a strike, which is our leadership, you know, was very bombastic in how they were saying that we were getting ready to go on strike, but there was no organization in the locals to actually carry out a national strike, which of course tipped off many people to the fact that a deal was going to be struck at the last minute. And although my local union was supportive of my flyering before the TA was released, once we launched the Vote No campaign and I was passing out Vote No flyers, me and other coworkers, we got extreme pushback from the company and also from our local union, who, violated the NLRA and harassing us to stop flyering, trying to control where and when we can flyer. We were abiding by the law, flying in non-work areas at non-work times. And the company started even targeting and harassing me individually, and fired me actually under the pretense of trumped up attendance issues. They actually also disallowed me from union representation in this termination meeting. Yeah, so I had to call on as many like union members to gather support to get reinstated, and I was actually reinstated the next day. But this is I hardly got any support from local union officials in this case, because they were very upset that I was holding true to the demands that were coming from the Teamsters members. We needed a much higher wage. Will highlighted earlier that TDU had put out $30 an hour starting pay for part-time workers at one time. $25 an hour was a demand that was agreed to nationally among Teamsters workers for part-timers, and that was also dropped by the IBT and TDU. So yeah, that's just a little bit of our experience in Seattle carrying out the Vote No campaign. Yeah, the Vote No campaign was a huge part of Teamsters Mobilize's development, brought together an expanded Teamsters Mobilize nationally to a lot of places that hadn't met us before, including myself. Yeah, so moving on from the Vote No campaign, which ended in the end of August, many of us Teamsters Mobilize members are TDU members as well. Some of us very long-time TDU members. And a group of us from Teamsters Mobilize decided to attend the 2023 convention together. Although we were like unhappy with the positions that TDU had taken in the contract campaign and against us in the TA, pushing a vote yes and abandoning its previous calls for $25 an hour for part-timers, among many other demands that were put forward by Teamsters members and even TDU members. We decided to attend the 2023 convention. At the convention, we decided to put forward some resolutions before the TDU membership. One of the betrayals we saw that was most egregious from Sean O'Brien was his going back on his campaign promise of open bargaining. He ran, supposedly for open negotiations, for transparency in negotiations. But when during the contract campaign at UPS, he had the whole negotiating team sign non-disclosure agreements. So the membership didn't know the actual proposals that were being put on the table, both by the company and by our union leadership. So one of the resolutions we brought was for open bargaining, a call for TDU to push for open bargaining in all Teamsters contracts. A second resolution we brought forward was calling for a ceasefire in Palestine. Maybe you all have seen that in so many unions in the United States and around the world, union members are calling for a ceasefire in Palestine, and we wanted to take up that same struggle in the Teamsters Union. And we could speak a lot about our experience at the TDU convention, but we did make a TDU convention report, and anyone who's interested in learning more about the developments at the TDU convention and how these resolutions went and our experience there, I'd encourage you to go to Teamsters Mobilize's YouTube channel and check that out. We also appeared on the What the Heck show to discuss what our experience at the 2023 TDU convention. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about the TDU convention. The next point in our agenda is since I guess we've gone over a little bit of the history of Teamsters Mobilize in some depth, but there's certainly more we could say. But through all this, we realized that Teamsters Mobilize is needed to develop. It started as just a few people and has grown now to include maybe close to 100 people around the country. And we recognized through the Vote No campaign that we needed to form a tighter organization than what we had at that point, which was mostly like a WhatsApp group. So in the last few months, those of us who were really active in the Vote No campaign formed a steering committee to be able to put a lot of time and effort into developing Teamsters Mobilize. So we've been working on an organizational structure that would allow us to carry out campaigns like the Vote No campaign and carry out all the work that we've talked about we see needs to be done in the Teamsters Union. So I'm going to go through briefly some main points of the Constitution that we drafted up and approved. I won't go into depth in it. It's a few pages of a document, so we're not going to read through all of it on this call. But the idea is that we're going to go over some of it, but then send you the Constitution to read over and give your feedback on. So yeah, with that, let's just go a little bit into the structure that we've drawn up. As I said before, we have a steering committee. I believe it has 9 members, all of whom are really active in the Vote No campaign. But we decided that we needed some other committees to be able to carry out our work effectively. So we drew up two committees, an organizing committee and a media and education committee. The organizing committee is tasked with creating campaigns to carry out, to organize shop floors and organize regionally and nationally these different campaigns. We're going to discuss those campaigns a little bit later after we go through the structure. But Jess, who you've heard speak today, is going to be chairing that committee, and Will Hale is going to be the secretary of that committee. And in addition to the organizing committee, we decided to form a media and education committee to be able to draft statements, to produce materials, to put out calls to action and communications on social media, and to develop educational discussions and presentations on different topics critical to our struggle within the Teamsters Union. And that's going to be headed up by Colleen as chair, and as Jennifer, who's not on this call, a 30-year part-timer, as the secretary. And these two committees, the organizing committee and media and education committee, are going to be open to anyone who wants to join from the general membership to take up these tasks and to carry forward our work in these two ways. So those committees are all going to be meeting probably monthly. We haven't worked out an exact schedule, but in addition to those committee meetings, we're going to be having general membership meetings, where, you know, all 100 or so TM members are encouraged to attend, where we're going to be presenting on the work of the two committees, and also calling on general members to take up the campaigns that we're going to be enacting. There's more details we can go that you'll see about the rights and responsibilities of members and such like that. Also, we're going to be implementing dues as well for general members. Then we also have a for those that aren't Teamsters but still want to support, we're going to have supporter status as well, for you to be able to participate in general membership meetings as a guest. You won't have like voting or debating rights, but we still want to include you. Yeah, and to help to kind of develop all of this structure, we also are building out Discord, because we think it'll better serve our purposes of communication than WhatsApp. So stay tuned for invites to Discord as we switch over from there. Colleen, would you like to speak? Go ahead.
Yes, just ever so briefly, because of like the concrete situation, the steering committee and these committees have sort of arrived as you know, people have outlined, but in the future, these obviously can be things that people can run for, and there will be like organizational wide elections, and these roles won't just be like self-appointed. We ourselves voted for each other within the steering committee and did give it some thought, but this won't be like a regular practice. And I think it's just where we're at as an organization and what needed to happen. And as far as like what's going on within the steering committee or these organizing committee, the media education, kind of all these things we've outlined, even the way we communicate, you know, we do want to encourage like a lot of criticism or feedback from everybody on these things. And something Tony has mentioned before to me is like, we're kind of like a kid, like in puberty, like maybe you have some awkward growth spurts, or, you know, what the upper body and the lower body might be kind of not really growing at the same speed. So I think like part of the process is also knowing that like some of this stuff might change, or we might realize once we get going in practice that adjustments need to be made.
but that's just something to anticipate and I think be excited for, and just kind of steel ourselves for that to happen and encourage people to point out there's a better way that we should be doing something. So that's all.
Yeah, thanks, Colleen. Yeah, we're a very young organization, just getting on its feet, and we're going to need a lot of help and input for how to organize internally and also carry out our work together. And one last thing I wanted to say, and then I see Zoe's hand, and I'll pass it to you for a question, I suppose. Is that well, how do you get involved with these committees and this work? We're going to be sending out a follow-up form to this meeting to all those that attended, to gather feedback and everything, but also ask if you're interested in joining one of these committees. Oh yeah, here it is. Chantel is posting it in the chat. And we'll follow up with you. We've just started building out these committees. So yeah, please join and help us build Teamsters Mobilize together.